Proverbs chapter 17, continuing in our series, kind of broken up series of Proverbs, going through Proverbs. And although we've been more consistent here for the past few months, but principles from Proverbs 17, part 2. We're going to try to cover the second half of this chapter tonight. Principles from Proverbs 17, part 2. And as there are in any chapter in Proverbs, there's some really good stuff, some really helpful things. And that's the point of this series, and going through even verse by verse. We don't spend a lot of time on each verse unless we have a topical message on one particular verse, particular subject. But it's helpful because these, even going briefly verse by verse, because it just helps get some things in our minds to help us to be reminded of some principles, be taught some principles, be challenged on some principles, and then hopefully, with the Lord's help, apply them to our lives. So Proverbs chapter 17 tonight, we're going to start in verse 15. So let's go to the Lord and pray and ask Him to speak to us through His Word. Heavenly Father, thank You for this time in Your Word, and I pray that You would please bless it, help us, Lord. And I pray that whatever is needed here to touch on somebody's life, that You would do that work. Help us to have open hearts to these principles and apply them to our lives with Your help, by Your strength. And may it help us to be better fit, more like Christ, and better fit to serve You and live for You. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's start at verse 15. He that justifieth the wicked, and he that condemneth the just, even they both are abomination to the Lord. Now this is turning right and wrong on its head. It's he that justifieth the wicked, those who excuse the wicked, those who say that what the wicked are doing are right, and then those who condemn the just, those who are trying to do justly, even they both are abomination to the Lord. It's turning right and wrong on its head. Keep your finger there and turn to Isaiah chapter 5. There's another strongly worded verse about this in Isaiah chapter 5. And we see this. This is happening. Pay attention in the world. And you may have already seen it, but if you haven't seen it, pay a bit of attention to it in the world. Particularly think about it. Think about what political figures, whether it's elected officials or those who are running for office, there's a lot of turning right and wrong on their head in our government, and in those who would love to be in our government, those who are already in our government, and those who are trying to be in our government. There's a lot of that. But probably a lot of the reason we have that in our government is because we have it among the general population as well. That the government we have oftentimes gets to be a reflection of what the people are like, and then it's kind of a cycle where the government then influences the people, but the people influence the government. And so we see that a lot. We're seeing it more and more, where there's just a lot of people who are against what is right according to the Bible and okay with what is wicked and ungodly. Think about our culture and what goes on in the culture as a whole. But Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20 says, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." And so when you've got, there's basically three different comparisons here. You have evil good and good evil. You've got darkness and light, and you've got bitter and sweet. Now something that's bitter, that's just bitter, is not sweet. Bitter is the opposite of sweet. So when someone says, "Oh, it's just a bittersweet time right now," it's a mixture of two things that are opposite. But if someone's putting bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter, it's the opposite. You could put, try putting in your next recipe of a dessert, try putting salt in the place of the sugar. It would be a very unpleasant experience, putting salt in the place of sugar. Or, on the other hand, maybe in some cases sugar goes fine in the place of salt, but then in other hand, sugar would not be as appropriate in the place of something where salt is meant to be. But they are opposites. That's the point here. They're opposites. Light and darkness are opposite. There's a distinction. Good and evil has a distinction. And it shows also something about the character of God and how He views right and wrong, that He does draw sharp contrasts. But He says, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. It's not going to go well for those people. God's not going to be favorable to them in their wickedness, and they're advocating for wicked things. Those who turn right and wrong on its head are, well, it says an abomination back in Proverbs chapter 17, they are abomination to the Lord. In other words, it means just very repulsive. It's disgusting to the Lord when people turn right and wrong upside down, calling things that are right wrong and calling things that are wrong right. And here it's the people, it says, that justifieth the wicked. So it's actually not just calling right wrong and wrong right, it's directed at the people. That person is wrong when they're trying to do right, or that person is right, but they are doing wrong. They're doing wickedly. And God is not pleased at all with it. It's very repulsive to Him, and it should be repulsive to us as well. It should be disgusting, abhorrent. And one of the reasons it should be, not just for the sake of and how we view other people and what goes on in the world, but it should also view it as abhorrent, so we don't find ourselves slipping into that, making excuses for the wicked, or maybe trying to justify why their actions. We might not agree with it, but there's times when people try to justify wickedness, and it's just wickedness is wickedness, righteousness is righteousness, and we need to view it in those distinct terms. In verse 16 it says, wherefore is there a price in the hand of a fool to get wisdom, seeing he hath no heart to it? So in other words, it seems pointless for a fool to have the means to get wisdom when he doesn't want it. He doesn't have any heart to it. He's not seeking after wisdom. And so even fools have every opportunity to gain wisdom. There are many resources available. Some might even have money. They might be able to buy books, or they might be able to buy a Bible, and or they might be able to do there's all kinds of things they could do in gaining wisdom. And so everybody has that opportunity in some way, shape, or form. But here it seems pointless. Why is this the case? Wherefore is there a price in the hand of a fool to get wisdom, seeing he hath no heart to it? The best thing for a fool is to change his way of thinking and seek after wisdom, but that's not the characteristic of a typical fool according to the Bible. Verse 17, a friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. A friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Now this we're going to spend some more time focused on next week, so I'm not going to delve into this too much, but we see that true friends are consistent in their love, their friendship to another. And then also when people go through adversity together, it really makes people like family. It says a brother is born for adversity. When you have someone, maybe it's, who are generally the people that are there for you in times of adversity? It could be someone in your physical, earthly family, as far as relational blood family, or oftentimes when someone's going through adversity, they might have a church family that is there for us, or there for them, or should be there for them in times of adversity. Or it could be someone who's part of God's family overall, just other Christians who are there for being born for adversity. And there's a special thing, there's a special connection there when it comes to adversity, and certain people that are just there, meant to be there for you when times of adversity come. And we should then also, in the same, not just being there for us, but then we also should be there for others in their time of adversity, whether it's a family member, church family, other Christian being there in that time. But true friends are consistent. It's not a fair weather friend. It's not a it's not a I get upset with you, now we're not friends anymore. I just went through and I defriended some people on Facebook. They don't know that you defriended them unless they actually look specifically to see if you're still their friend, or they might see your name pop up as a friend suggestion. Wait a minute, didn't I already friend that person? What do you mean you're not my friend anymore? But they don't get a notification I've unfriended them. One of the people I unfriended was a I was just getting tired of seeing the nonsense from, and I hate to say it's a pastor, but he posted, he's every once in a while he posts things, and I've been able to see for months, or ever since seeing him on Facebook, I've been able to see for months what direction he's going as far as personally and in the church. And there was one thing I tried to warn him about, and when it came to the promotion of a certain author, a certain book, and I said, there's this book by David Cloud, or I showed a link to this book by David Cloud about this person who wrote the book, and it had to do with music. And he says, basically like David Cloud. He didn't want to hear anything about what David Cloud said. Nothing. It didn't matter what the book said. Didn't matter what the warning was. He just didn't want anything to do with David Cloud. He has something against David Cloud, probably because David Cloud spends a lot of time warning people about compromise and those types of things. But then he saw this one post where just the other day actually I snoozed him for 30 days so I wouldn't see any of his posts. You can snooze people without unfriending them. So you can snooze them for 30 days, or you can just unfollow them where you're still friends, you just won't see any of their posts. So there's different ways to not see people's posts. But apparently the 30 days was up. So I see this post that says, some people, I'm not going to forget the quote now, but some people call this pandering to the culture. And it shows a picture of like this dark, dimly lit church with these people with their hands in the air, like the modern praise and worship rock concert type of thing. Some people call this pandering to the culture, but sometimes, I'm not quoting that first part exactly right, but sometimes this is pandering to the culture, and it shows these people dressed up nice in church, traditional church dress, so in other words, it was an attack against just wearing your best to church, and somehow that's pandering to the culture. I'm not sure what culture that is. Now maybe it has to do with people dress that way because they think, well, that's the way I need to dress to church. We just do it because we've always done it that way. Maybe that's what they're talking about. But I just thought, once again, it's another excuse for compromising behavior in a compromising direction. And it's not just that post. I'm seeing it in various ways in different things he's been posting. And I just decided, you know what? I already tried to warn him about this music person he was promoting, this author about a book on music he was promoting. I already tried to warn him. I already tried to reprove him. And I just decided, you know what? I'm going to go down through my friend list. I'm going to unfriend him. And I thought, well, I'm at it. I'm going to go down through and see if there's anybody else I want to unfriend. And so there was someone I don't even know, this other, I guess he's an evangelist. He's an older gentleman. And has served the Lord, lived for the Lord a long time. I don't doubt his own integrity and his own heart for the Lord at all. But but some of these evangelists, they just post a lot of things about. It's about President Trump. It's about abortion. It's about all these things, and things it just kind of gets repetitious after a while. And one of these things was an article that he shared just today. I saw this, an article he shared of a Democratic presidential candidate, and he was sharing an article of this presidential candidate he is married to a man, and the article had to do with them kissing at a campaign rally. And it shows a picture of them, and I thought, why do I want this in my Facebook feed? Yes, it's horrible. Yes, it's terrible. Why are you sharing it? What's the point of sharing it? So I decided, I'm going to unfriend him too. I don't even know him personally. He's got I think he's probably got 4,900, 5,000 friends on Facebook, so he's not going to miss me. Some people it's like boom, boom, friend, send friend request. Anyway, and I say all that to say, with Facebook, you can friend and unfriend people, and it can be kind of back and forth. Now, I hate unfriending people. I'm very careful about who I select as a friend if I get a friend request, because I don't want to be in a position where I unfriend somebody. But with Facebook, you can friend people, you can unfriend people, just with a click of a mouse. But just because you're friends on Facebook does not mean that means you're that close of friends in just personal relationship. You can be friends on Facebook with someone that you don't even know. Does that mean you're really friends? Like the biblical definition of a friend, not really. But a true friend is consistent. True friend is consistent in their love, and it doesn't mean that there's never a need for correction, or there's never any disagreements, but true friends are consistent. We'll delve into more of that next week. Verse 18, a man void of understanding striketh hands and becometh surety in the presence of his friend. A person should not put, now even with friends, this kind of connects with friends because it says in verse 18, and becometh surety in the presence of his friend. So when you have a friend loveth at all times, that doesn't mean you just do anything for a friend. In this case, a man void of understanding striketh hands and becometh surety in the presence of his friend, which means that he's taking on the debt of his friend, or he's agreeing to back his friend, who apparently, and there's a significance that, there seems to be a significance, it says, in the presence of his friend. So it's not just a person saying on behalf of their friend, look, I'm here on behalf of my friend, they're good for it, they're going to do this, I'm just here on behalf of them because they're coming later and they'll take care of it. That's different. But here it's in the presence of his friend. So someone needs it might be it's basically, it's being very careful about surety. It's being very careful about co-borrowing with someone else, even with a friend. I might be friends with somebody. That doesn't always mean I'm going to sign my name to agreeing on a loan with them. It would really have to be the right situation to do that, because it says, a man void of understanding striketh hands and becometh surety in the presence of his friend. Because when a person is striking hands, if they are say co-signing, being a co-borrower to just simply back someone else so they can get the loan, that person might not be able to be counted on to pay their debts. So you're putting yourself out there. I'm putting myself out there on their behalf. And we should not do anything that is going to threaten, if a person cannot be counted on to threaten the well-being of ourselves or our family, the welfare of ourselves or family. So I could, being in the banking industry, you see that there are some people who are very clearly they're good for it. They're very good with money, and they might have an auto loan, they might have some different types of things going on, and they're very, very faithful about paying their bills. Then there are other people who come for loans, and the reason they need a loan is they don't have any other money to speak of. That's not the type of person you want to strike hands with someone, even if they're a friend. They might be a friend. They might not be a bad person in the sense of you might be friendly to them. You might get along with them pretty well. But if they're not good with money, and those who are good with money should not need someone to strike hands in the presence of the friend. Now, there are times when I've heard of it where some people need a little bit of a boost regarding mortgages, because it's hard to get in the door as far as a mortgage is concerned because of all the different requirements that might be a hindrance. Not to say that a person couldn't pay the bills, it's just needing to meet the requirements. And so there are times when there might be a time for that, and especially if the person who is co-signing if they actually are going to have a stake in, if that person doesn't pay and they have to pay, then they get some sort of stake in, say, the property or the house or whatever. If there's something in it for them, doesn't always mean it's a bad thing to do if there is some recourse, but or something to be gained out of it. But anyway, the Bible warns against striking hands, and if a person has become surety for someone else, the Bible says, make thy suretyship sure. You need to make sure you are fulfilling your end of the agreement. So there's the two prongs here. Be careful about going into it in the first place. It's not a wise thing to do. But if you have done it, it's generally not a wise thing to do. But if you have done it, basically you need to make sure thy friend. You need to do what you're supposed to do, and you need to back up what you said you were going to do. So that's the importance of being very, very cautious and recognizing it's not a wise thing to jump into that. So even if it's a friend, verse 19, he loveth transgression that loveth strife, and he that exalteth his gates seeketh destruction. This striving about things that are not profitable lead to sin. So he loveth transgression that loveth strife. Now there are some good ways and bad ways the word strife is mentioned in the Bible. Paul talked about striving together for the sake of the gospel, or for the faith of the gospel. Striving together. What's that? That means we're all working together very hard for a particular purpose, toward a particular goal. But there's the bad kind of striving, which is just simply a contentious type of striving, like a fighting type of striving, and that leads to transgression. It says, he loveth transgression that loveth strife. Whenever there's strife and contention, it's going to lead to some sort of transgression, some sort of sin. And also those who are prideful, those who, it says, he that exalteth his gate seeketh destruction. Those who are lifting themselves up, those who promoting themselves, they seek destruction. They will experience a downfall. There's going to be big problems coming down the road for those people. It must not be one of the things I don't like is, and I try to avoid myself, is self-promotion. Self-promotion. There's a lot of self-promoters out there. And especially in this technology-driven day, it's very easy to promote oneself. And there's times I'm thinking, well, what's the good balance between just having material and just letting people know of maybe some teaching, maybe you're preaching, maybe if somebody writes a book, there can be some information that is given, some promotion of it, in a healthy sense. But then there are people, it's basically they kind of become a brand unto themselves, and it's all about them and their own self-promotion. So I tend toward the non-self-promoting side, and hopefully we continue to do so. But while still put messages out there, and we have a YouTube channel. But most of my promotion is not so much myself, but it is of the church and the preaching that is offered, which happens to be me. But it's not so much trying to build a brand for myself. And so I've been pondering some additional material, some additional maybe like whether it's audio or video that might be more personalized, not so much just preaching from the pulpit at church, but those types of things that's more personalized, that's meant for online consumption. And I'm thinking, how do I do that without? I don't want it to be self-promoting, but at the same time, to get the material out, you do have to let it out there. And but it's something that's on my mind that rubs me the wrong way is when people are very self-promoting. Even there can be a lot of self-promotion even in the ministry, in churches, and in Christianity as a whole. Those that are prideful, those that exalt their gate, they seeketh destruction. Verse 20, he that hath a froward heart findeth no good, and he that hath a perverse tongue falleth into mischief. So the person with both a heart and tongue that go astray. So here we have both mentioned. He that hath a froward heart findeth no good. So that's the inward. If someone's going astray in their own heart, that's where it starts, is the heart. And they're not going to find good. And he that hath a perverse tongue falleth into mischief. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So there's a connection between the person's heart and a person's mouth. And you're not going to find good when you have a froward heart, the heart that's going astray. But then when it comes out, when whatever's inside comes out and you have a perverse tongue, something's that's not right, that's not godly, that's off the right path, that's twisted, well, then you're going to fall into mischief because now you've let it out. And boy, how powerful the mouth is, how powerful speech is. And so it's important that our hearts are right, and then as a result, what comes out of our mouths are right as well. And then we will find good. In verse 21, he that begetteth a fool doeth it to his sorrow, and the father of a fool hath no joy. And And sad to say that having a foolish or wicked child does take the joy out of other parts of life. So some of these proverbs are just simply saying, here's the way life is. This is just observations about life. And it shows the heart of parents when they have, say, foolish or wicked children, or one or more, and they don't find joy in life because it's so heavy on their heart about the state of their children or child. And but what we see is, though, that not really that there is a connection directly meant between these two verses, but it's interesting that these two verses are next to each other, is that even though the father of a fool hath no joy, verse 22, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. And so even if, yes, maybe someone's in a position, you've got a foolish child, a wicked child, or whatever it is, whoever they are, it's still a good thing to have a merry heart. Somehow, moving ahead in life and having the perspective that allows you to have a merry heart. And here this verse shows us that the condition of our spiritual heart affects us physically. And there have been connections made many times in this, and some of it it's hard to do scientifically because you don't always know why a person has a certain physical problem. It could be related to something in the heart that's going on, their spiritual heart and their emotions and their mind, that might cause undue stress and tension in the body that then harms the body. Or sometimes, bad things happen, diseases happen it can happen to anybody. Someone can get a disease and it's not related to anything that they did or did not do. It's just we live in a fallen world. So it's hard. It's harder to connect those things, but there is some consistency, at least in showing that bad things do happen in the body when a person is stressed, when a person is overcome, and it doesn't mean a person is never sad or never grieved, but when a person just lives in a certain way all the time or very regularly, it can be a problem when there's all that tension built up. There's a book called None of These Diseases. I have not read the book. My wife had to read it in college for nursing, but the author of that book, Dr. S.I. McMillan, said in that book, with each passing year we obtain a wider comprehension of the ability of the mind, the psyche, to produce varied disturbances of the body. Soma, hence the term psychosomatic. Invisible emotional tension in the mind can produce striking visible changes in the body, changes that can become serious and fatal. This concept should give us a new perspective on conditions that are often contemptuously referred to being in the head. Obviously, various conditions are not in the head, and he gives some examples like vomiting, diarrhea, asthma, and arthritis. There are things that are not in someone's head. It's real. It's very real. Yet, these and scores of other serious diseases are triggered or aggravated by tension in the mind. A large percentage of most physicians' practices are made up of patients whose illnesses are directly or indirectly the result of emotional stress. Stress often reduces a person's ability to fight off infections. The brain, where all the emotional stress is produced, is the control center of the entire body. From the brain, millions of nerve fibers course out to every organ in the body. Chemicals released from these nerve fibers control or influence every chemical reaction in every organ of the body. Because our health is dependent on the proper balance of all these chemical reactions, it is no wonder that emotional upset in our brains can disrupt chemical reactions in a far removed organ and cause disease. And notice the connection there in the mind and chemical. What a lot of people, they'll go to the doctor and they have tension, they have stress, there's all kinds of things, and a lot of times it's anger, it's bitterness, there's unforgiveness, there's hurt, there's trauma that's happened to the person mentally, emotionally. And so they go to the doctor and, oh, you know what, you have a chemical imbalance, so we are going to give you some medicine to fix this chemical imbalance. But what caused the chemical imbalance? There may be times when it is simply something that happened physically to cause a chemical imbalance. That certainly can be the case. But there are many people who are dealing with a lot of emotional and mental stress and anguish and turmoil and tension that then affects them physically. Among the things that Dr. McMillan lists that are caused or affected by stress include disorders of the digestive system. Now, that's really a big one when it comes to stress and tension. Disorders of the circulatory system, disorders of the genitourinary system, disorders of the nervous system, disorders of glands, allergic disorders, muscle joint disorders, infections, inflammatory and skin diseases, nutritional and drug disorders, and cancer. That's a pretty large list, and that's not saying that everybody who deals with something like that is because of stress, but those are things that can very much be aggravated or even caused by stress and tension. And when people lose the battle in the mind, when they're dealing with all these things, it has a bad effect. It has a bad effect on the body. A merry heart, but on the other hand, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. So it's not just simply having a merry heart can give you the absence or less of a likelihood of these problems. It actually is good for your body. A merry heart, a good for your body. But a broken spirit drieth the bones. Broken spirit. So many people deal, and I don't say any of this lightly, like, oh, you know what, it's just all your fault. If you have these problems, it's all your fault. No, it's a very serious thing. A broken spirit drieth the bones. How many people walk through life with a broken spirit? A broken spirit. What about people who are depressed? They're always depressed. Or maybe the world would call them chronically depressed or chronic depression. And is that the term, chronic depression? I don't know. It doesn't sound right. Is there some sort of... And I asked my wife, I found this quote and I said, now does this quote sound right? She says, yeah, it sounds right. And I told her what book it was from. She said, I had to read that in college. I said, yeah, I know, and I actually think we have it on our shelf. I just have never read it. And so there are people, I just deal with depression. Well, you need some medicine for that depression. Now, wait a minute. Was the absence of... I'll put a little spin on what one doctor said in a book. He said, when people deal with headaches all the time, migraine headaches, and they take medicine and they just rely on medicine for their headaches, was the absence of the medicine what caused their headache? Same thing with depression. They say, oh, you need some medicine for this depression. Was the absence of the medicine what caused their depression? I mean, what is it fixing? Is it actually fixing something? Is it healing something? Now, sometimes people need to take painkillers when you might have a headache. You just got a kick, but the absence of that medicine is not the cause of the headache. The absence of that painkiller is not the cause of the headache. There's something else that's causing the headache. Now, I think the book that came from was Your Body's Many Cries for Water, and this doctor was all about the water. Water. That basically the body is crying out for water, and I think there's some truth to that. It's an interesting book at the very least. But the whole point is that we need to get back to a biblical point of view on the heart, on the mind. And when I say heart, I kind of point to where our heart is, but really it is the control center is in our mind. As we say, heart and mind. And we need to get back to a biblical point of view that if we're going to help people be delivered and help people, have a good medicine, the merry heart, we need to get back to a biblical perspective that it's not just simply passing people off to, you need to just go see a psychiatrist where you can get some medicine for that. Now, there are some deep-rooted issues where people can get delivered if they will only be willing to, and if there are people who have the biblical answers to help them in that deliverance. But just goes to show this verse, a merry heart doeth good, the connection between the heart condition, the condition of the mind, and the body. Verse 23, a wicked man taketh a gift out of the bosom to pervert the ways of judgment. In other words, bribery is wicked. Bribery is a gift that is meant to have undue influence, have improper influence on someone else in this case here, a matter of judgment. It says pervert the ways of judgment. Oh, you mean I can get off the hook if I just slip the judge some money? Or whatever the situation is. And you mean I'll get a lesser sentence if there's some influence there? And that's why, even in our political system, there's a lot of money that gets passed back and forth between candidates and those who would like to have influence. There's a lot of money. Now, the money is not always given for the purpose of influence, but often with the money comes a lot of strings attached to it that you just need to do what we say, or maybe the money might not be there. So bribery, whatever situation the bribery is ungodly, it's wicked, and that perverts judgment. Now, God is a God of judgment. He's a God of justice. He's a God of equity. And so certainly God would dislike and He would forbid and He would speak against something that would pervert that. Verse 24, wisdom is before him that hath understanding, but the eyes of a fool are in the ends of the earth. A person with understanding doesn't have to look far for wisdom. It's right there. It's right there for the taking, if you have understanding. But a fool who doesn't have understanding is far off from wisdom. He's going out here, there, and everywhere, maybe looking for wisdom, maybe trying to grasp at something, but he's unsettled. He's far off from wisdom. He doesn't have it right there. He needs to get some good biblical knowledge and the wisdom of God, the knowledge of God, the understanding, and then wisdom will be right there for the fool. Verse 25, a foolish son is a grief to his father and bitterness to her that bare him. So once again, kind of the same thing of verse 21 of a fact of life. At this point, for my wife and I, we're kind of too early to tell if, how much grief we'll have. So I don't take anything for granted. And there are many who could identify with, boy, it's just a grief. This child is a grief, and it is a sad thing. My heart goes out to those who live that way, who have that grief, because it can be such a disappointment. And but this is just as a statement of a fact here. This is what happens when there's a foolish son, a foolish child. Also, to punish the just, verse 26, also to punish the just is not good. Now, let me just say that, based on verses 21 and 25. What do you do then? Do you just live life grieved? Do you just live life depressed? Do you just live life sorrowful? Well, that doesn't match what Scripture says. And so there must be a way forward, and the way forward is turning it over to the Lord. The way forward is through prayer. The way forward is casting all your care upon Him. Casting all your anxiety, all the grief you have, just giving that over to the Lord. And then rejoicing in the things that we have to rejoice about. Because there still is plenty to rejoice about in the Christian life. Verse 26, also to punish the just is not good, nor to strike princes for equity. So now we come back again to the good and evil aspect. Here's punish the just. This is someone who's doing rightly, someone who's doing what is good and equitable and fair, and what is according to the Lord's justice. He says, it's not good to punish the just. Don't punish those who are doing right. And it says, nor to strike princes for equity. So those who are in leadership, some sort of authority that might get hit pretty hard for trying to do right. It's not good. Also, to punish the just is not good, nor to strike princes for equity. And I've heard it said that, with as downhill as the environment in our federal government has gotten, as far as the going back and forth and the fighting and the bitterness and the power struggles, that it really, and the corruption that goes on, that it really discourages decent people from running. Now, there are some decent people in government, certainly, but it is less likely, because it's going to, do you really want to wade into that? Into that system? And it's a sad thing. It's too bad, but But what happens when someone actually tries to do what is right? Well, they get hit for doing good, be punished, saying it's not good when that happens. We still need to stand for what is right and encourage and promote what is good here in America and throughout the world, no matter what else anybody else is doing or saying. In verse 27 and verse 28, we'll finish with these two verses. He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. So these verses deal with our words and attitudes. He that hath knowledge spareth his words. And one commentator, John Gill, said, one that is very knowing, has a fund of knowledge in him, spareth his words, is generally a man of few words. He thinks much and says little. And though he may be communicative of his knowledge to proper persons and at proper times, yet never speaks of it in a boasting and ostentatious way. Or he restrains his words, he puts a bridle on them, and suffers not himself to speak hastily and angrily and in a reproachful manner when he is provoked to it. And so one of the best things we can do, the more knowledge we have, now one of the ways you gain knowledge is by being quiet, so that kind of helps. But once you gain the knowledge, the more knowledge you have, the more it's important to guard your mouth. Be careful what you say. Don't be a know-it-all. Don't be prideful. Don't have to inject yourself into everything. Just because you know something doesn't mean it has to be said in every situation. And it says, a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Now the word excellent here means valuable, costly, precious, honorable. So that Hebrew word there's actually translated many times precious in the Old Testament. And it's also translated honorable, costly. But overall it means valuable. It's of an excellent spirit. It's a good spirit. It's something that is worth something. A man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. So not just your words, but your spirit. What attitude comes out? And then when you do speak, if you have an excellent spirit, if you have a valuable, good, honorable spirit, then the words that come out will be the right words at the right time as well, said in the right spirit. And verse 28 says, even a fool. So here we have finally something positive about a fool. I like this verse. Because, the fool gets hit around pretty much in Proverbs, rightfully so. But here we have a good thing about a fool. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise. Even a fool can look like he's wise if he keeps his mouth shut. It's when he opens his mouth. What's the saying? Better to close your mouth and let people think you're a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. And so even a fool is counted as wise. It's a wise thing, even for a fool, to hold his peace. And so how much more for those who have understanding, for those who have godly wisdom, to hold their peace. This is something I have to come back to quite a bit, because there might be something I have a lot of knowledge about, and I might be just ready to impart the vast amounts of knowledge on a particular subject. And I find that most of the time, if there's a regret I have, it is that I spoke too much and not spoke too little. If I have regrets about something in a conversation or speech, it's that I've spoken too much and not too little. Sometimes there are things I wish I would have said that I didn't say. Most of the time, it's me wishing I wouldn't have said something that I did say. He that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. So if you just want people to think you're wise, view you as wise and a person of understanding, and maybe you are, but if you don't get the credit you deserve, then you're prideful. But if you don't think you're getting the credit you deserve, you need to humble yourself. But it can be, let's just put it this way, it can be a good testimony. A good personal testimony can be a good example when you keep your mouth closed when it needs to be closed. And when people esteem you a person of understanding or wisdom, then you might be the one that they go to for answers. And you might have the good answers for them. You have the right answers. So when they're ready to hear the answers, when they're ready to hear the knowledge you have, if they already think you're a person who's wise and a person of understanding, that puts you in a much better position to minister to people, to make a difference in people's lives. That's the end of Proverbs 17. So I hope you've gleaned something from these principles. Tonight I know I have. They're very helpful and some very key verses here. And so whatever it is that the Lord's speaking to your heart about, just let Him, just by His grace and just with a surrendered heart, apply these things to your life.